On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, Darko Rajaković said on Media Day that he's hoping to play a 10 or 11-man rotation, yet the Raptors have more guys than that who figure to want minutes. Who's in, who's out, and more coming up on today's show with Chelsea Leite from Raptors HQ.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, October the 1st. The best month is here, baby. And I am your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 12 seasons on various platforms, 10 seasons now on this podcast. And you can find all my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram. You can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server, link in the description of the podcast. And today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5. If your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started, and we will get started here on a show where we're talking about the bench dudes. There's been lots of talk about the starters, the fit, the lack thereof, whatever. Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, all the guys who spoke at Media Day, the guys who didn't speak at Media Day. I'm just as fascinated by this year for a Raptors team that finally seems to have some depth, guys all worthy of minutes. In fact, some competition that might see guys get squeezed out of the rotation. And Darko Rajaković on Monday talked about wanting to play a 10 or 11-man rotation to help keep up the pace with their incredibly aggressive, in-your-face, high pickup point, high-pressure defense. And here to try to rank the bench guys in terms of likelihood that they will get heavy rotation run to not so likely, we will welcome in now the lovely Chelsea Leite from Raptors HQ. Chelsea, how's it going?
It's going so good. It's so chaotic in my life right now. But good.
You cover the WNBA, to be clear. Yeah. If anyone is aware of what's going on in the WNBA over the last couple of days on and off the court, I don't envy you. It's a lot to dig into. Thank you for taking the time to slum it with me on the podcast today.
Anytime.
Yeah, let's get to it. So yeah, we're going to try to rank in some sort of order the bench guys in terms of how likely we think it is they're going to play heavy minutes. And I guess we can start off with the dudes who I feel like are surefire in the rotation day one, guys who are going to have to lose their job in order to not be playing rotation minutes at the start of the season. Again, we're trying to assemble a 10 or 11-man rotation here. I know there are some skeptics of running deep in a rotation. I think in the modern NBA, where having lots of dudes and you play a really aggressive style, all of it just requires depth. It requires lots of bodies, lots of dudes who can come in and give max energy for a stretch. I think 10 or 11 for a team like this makes a lot of sense. And so, Chelsea, I've kind of got it tiered out here. I've got surefire dudes who I think are going to play from day one. Guys who are maybe going to be on the outs, are going to have to earn their spot in, but certainly will get rotation run at some point. And then guys who I just don't think are very much going to play unless disaster strikes. Let's start with the dudes who we feel like are guaranteed to get run. How many would you say, like I have 4 guys in my tier. We'll get into the names. How many would you say from the Raptors bench you feel confident are like definitely going to play minutes?
Yeah, I agree with the 4. I think there's also like a 5 and 6 on the fringe. Who could, I think Darko could use as like depending on the game situation kind of guy, or like if there's an injury or if, fouls happen, et cetera, et cetera. Like I do think there's 4 who will be playing every night. And I do think there's like another 2 that I have in my head that are those kind of fringe guys that like may play some nights, may not play other nights.
Yeah, let's get into the guys who I think are surefire. And one of them is a new addition based on what we heard on Media Day. I think I might have had it as 3 plus one other guy who I felt pretty sure about. Now, we got to say it. Mamu, I think, is in there. Darko Rajaković talked about Mamu as someone who's going to be their backup 5 from day one, help unlock their wings, give some spacing, give some shooting. We talked at length about Mamu yesterday with Dave Dufour, who of course coached Mamu with the Georgia national team at the last World Cup. Go check that show if you haven't yet. But Yeah, for me, it's Gradey Dick, Ochai Agbaji, Mamu, and Collin Murray-Boyles, who I have in that first tier. Gradey Dick, pretty obvious. They're very invested in him. It's a big year for him. He's going to be extension eligible before next season, and he had some extremely high highs last season, Chelsea. I think he's going to get sort of the quote-unquote sixth man treatment for this team. I think he's going to be added to a lot of lineups to provide shooting, whether they're playing, more sort of small oriented with wings in the front court, or they have just their classic, situation out there. He's just such a good shooter and such a good mover, and a guy who has so much gravity as a player on and off the ball, that I think he's just going to be part of the plan. And again, they're invested in him. He's a lottery pick. They seem to believe in him big time. They have declared him untouchable, and rumors passed along through various chains of information in recent months. Where are you at on Gradey Dick as the sort of clear sixth man for this team? Is there someone who you think might challenge him for that status?
No, I agree with you. And I think, Darko said it on Monday that it's really hard to judge guys by their sophomore season. I think, you have so much adrenaline going into your rookie season. You have so much. And the team situation itself has changed so much since Gradey's rookie season as well. So I do think that this season is going to be big for him. I do think that him coming off the bench as a sixth man will be much better for his development than being thrust into the starter role that he kind of was last year after all the injuries. And I agree, it's a big year for him, but I do think that this, the sophomore slump, he did have a lot of really great highs last year, as you mentioned, but I do think it's hard to judge after a rookie season as a lottery player, as someone who immediately comes into a rebuilding team and gets a lot of minutes. And so I'm excited to see what he does this year. A little bit less pressure on him, which I think is good for guys in his situation. I'm excited to see how he kind of uses that. That sixth man role is kind of, it works for players like him who come off the bench, immediately start shooting, can get some really good points in there at the end of maybe the first quarter going into the second quarter, and just provide that energy off the bench, which I think he'll kind of thrive in.
Yeah, totally. He played 29 and a half minutes a game last season, which is kind of crazy considering just, again, how new he still is, right? He was 21 last year. He's still a beanpole. An impromptu game here. He's a very skinny boy, but an impromptu game here, Chelsea. On Monday with Vivek, we played the media day smell test, where we took things from the day and sniffed them and decided whether or not we buy them or not. One thing we didn't talk about, Darko talked about Gradey Dick, best shape of his life. He's thickening up. He's strong. Do you buy that?
You know what? Knowing what the baseline was, he couldn't shrink. So I buy it.
Yeah, I'm, again, we'll see if he keeps it on throughout the entire season. He looked stronger at the start of last year too, and then whittled away as he just had to carry the offense so heavily for the first 2 months of the season that eventually broke him. I'm hopeful that again, with a lesser role. Those first couple months sucked. They were a really fun 2-12 team at one point. Don't forget, the most spunky 2-12 that ever was to start a season. Gradey was really good in all of that, and it was a big reason why they were so spunky early on. But yeah, I just think less burden. He's going to be able to play with better players, which I think is a big deal. At times last year, it was like him and RJ Barrett running the offense, which is maybe not what you want. I'm a believer, Chelsea, when it comes to young players. I'm looking for the flashes of what they can do. And if they can reach high highs, okay, I'm willing to put my chips on that guy and bet on him to sort of string those highs together more regularly as time goes on, as they mature, as they get more accustomed to league life. And the highs from Gradey Dick last year were immensely high. The shot making was ridiculous. The movement, the 3-point shooting, the dunks. I think, he's got to refine some things. His interior scoring really needs to improve. He was off with the rim last season, but I think in this role where he's not overextended, he stands a chance of being the clear number one dude off the bench for the Raptors, who I think is going to close some games as well because of that offensive juice he brings. Ochai Agbaji. Let's talk about him. He was a guy who started a lot of games last year. I guess you could kind of say he was the nominal sixth man for the team, even though I think he started more than he came off the bench. He is a bit of an interesting character in this bench because these other guys, Murray-Boyles, Shead, Walter, there and Dick, like there's investment in them going forward as, guys the team recently picked. Not to say there's not investment in Agbaji, but he's in the final year of his contract. I doubt he's getting an extension before the season starts. And it's sort of this wishy-washy, like, is he in the plans? Is he not? And if he's not, is he going to get excised from the rotation? Could he find himself out of this top 4 at some point this year? What's your read on Agbaji this year? What do you expect from him off the bench?
I do think if we're talking about like where he ends this season, maybe not with this team ? He could be
He's
a very
the easy guy to duck the tax with if you have
exactly. Yeah, he's an easy guy to kind of relieve some cash flow at the trade deadline, if you know what we're talking about. But I think to start this season, he kind of plays that coming off the bench role, but in like an opposite way of Gradey, when you need a really big defensive possession, maybe at the end of a quarter, end of a game, he's kind of someone that you can bring in to boost the team's defense. But he did show, like, he has shown a lot of upside in the past few years, as again, he's been one of those guys that is thrust into a bigger role than expected, given all of the injuries and et cetera, that the Raptors have gone through. So yeah, I do think he's in the rotation as of right now. I also do think that if I'm looking at any of these guys on the team, when we talk about long-term, I mean, Bobby Webster said last week that he's very open to trading players as needed and very open to changing the roster as the year goes on. So when I look at this roster, I do think that he's up there in terms of could be a good piece to trade. And I mean, that's not a slight on him. I think that means that he has a lot of upside. I think that means he could be a good chip to kind of either get a pick back or get, someone else back if the Raptors are looking for some sort of different role. But at the same time, like if they end up liking him, they could just end up deciding that he's the best option at the end of the day. So yeah, I think it could go either way with him.
Yeah, I would probably lean towards he's not on the team come season's end if we're picking one or the other, just because of the tax thing. And, at the same time, if they decide RJ Barrett's the guy to trade, which is obviously the other thing that's been kind of floated out there, then maybe that just makes it easy for them to say, hey, you know what? Like Agbaji is like our third 2-guard wing type who can kind of fill in, can spot start when there's injuries. Like he could prove himself to be pretty valuable this year and kind of indispensable too. Like if Brandon Ingram takes injuries, as has been the case for him in the past, then Agbaji might just be the easy guy to sub in the starting 5 there, as he was last year. If RJ struggles or takes an injury, then you would imagine Ochai is another very easy guy to just swap in to the starting 5 because he doesn't take anything off the table. He's a good 5th option. He can just kind of hit shots and cut to the rim and defend and all that stuff. We'll see. Interesting year for Ochai Agbaji for sure. There are a couple more guys in that first tier I want to talk about coming up in a sec here. Chelsea, we'll talk more about Mamu and we'll get into Collin Murray-Boyles and then the rest of the dudes competing to get into that mix in the top 9 or so of the rotation, which includes all of the rookies from last season. We'll do that coming up in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And yeah, you can throw some money on a team you think is like definitely going to win in the football season, right? There's no sure things in the NFL, but if there's a team you feel great about, you can throw $5 on them. If they win, then you get that $300 in bonus bets, and you can put that anywhere. It can be on football, spreads, parlays, whatever, or you can turn your attention to the NBA. The NBA season is near. Throw some money down on who's going to win it all, who's going to win the awards, all that good stuff. You can also do it with the baseball playoffs, the happiness hedge. If you're worried about the Blue Jays losing, bet on them to lose. So you might get some money out of the deal, even if they falter in the playoffs, as most baseball teams do. All of it is over at FanDuel. If you go to checkout right now, visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started and get that $300 in bonus bets. Go check it out. Back out here with Chelsea Leite from Raptors HQ, my old stomping grounds back in the old blog days. My blog fingers are rusty these days, Chelsea. I'm just a podcast man. I've sold out. But let's get back into the sort of upper tier of bench guys for the Raptors. Again, okay. Gradey Dick, Ochai Agbaji, I had 1, 2. 3 and 4, I've got Mamu and Collin Murray-Boyles in that order. Again, Mamu I did not have entrenched in this upper tier 3 days ago, but hearing Darko talk about him and just thinking about the way the team is going to look, seems as though we should expect him to get pretty heavy run as the backup 5 for this team.
Yeah.
And then Collin Murray-Boyles, speaking of guys who got glowing praise on media day, shivers down my spine listening to Darko talk about how he's just the strongest lad who ever ladded. We talked a lot about Mogbo yesterday. You can go listen to that show with Dave Dufour if you want to get a deeper dive on how we think he's going to fit into the team. But with Collin Murray-Boyles here, Chelsea, again,
Yeah.
Darko singing the praises, thinks he can be an impact defender from day one. Don't think he's under any illusion that it's going to be, easy on offense from day one for him. But you don't often hear rookies spoken about in the light that Murray-Boyles was, specifically when it comes to the strength and activity and all of that. Am I right to have included him in this upper tier to you?
Yeah, I think with any lottery player that, you spend an entire season losing for, you're gonna want to get some run out of them. Boyles or Mr. Chloe Kitts, as I call him.
Hey, we are working on a better nickname than CMB. This is the
CMB.
leader in the clubhouse.
Mr. Chloe Kitts. For those of you who don't know, Chloe Kitts is the girlfriend of CMB, who also plays for
Tempo star.
Future Toronto Tempo star, current South Carolina Gamecocks star, on the women's side. And that kind of like brings me to, now don't get me wrong, like a team, like a college program is not the same on the men's and women's side. Like I'm not trying to put any comparisons here, but from what I know of South Carolina basketball, like very strong, very physical players, especially when you think about the SEC, especially on the women's side, is very physical, very, you gotta be able to hold your own when it comes to being on that court. So it doesn't completely surprise me that CMB is already kind of up there when it comes to being a bit more fit, a bit more strong. He kind of has that build. When you look at him, he's not like a lanky guy. I think he's like pretty filled out for his height. But yeah, I do think that when you get a guy, they get him 9th?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, June is already out of my brain. When you get a guy 9th and you spend, you're in this process of rebuilding and, you get a pick that high, you're going to want to see what they can do and kind of give them a little bit of rookie run. And I think maybe not as much as they did last season, but I do think the Raptors have a little bit of room to try and experiment with Collin and see what he can kind of bring to a team. And I mean, again, Darko said this on Monday, something along the lines of like, you don't really expect rookies to make a big impact. Or maybe it was Bobby who said it. Again, I don't know. Days are blurring here, but again, you don't expect rookies to be able to come and make that much of an impact on a very, on these high level NBA teams because, you're fighting for the playoffs and rotations are going to shrink and et cetera, and, adjustments and trying to get used to NBA basketball. But I do think that like Darko is the kind of guy who really wants to develop his young players. I do think that there might be a little bit of, encouragement from upstairs to try and see how fast we can fast track CMB's kind of development here. And I do think that they drafted him for a reason. He wasn't necessarily like on the board at that level, at that position when it came to NBA draft night. But as we know here in Toronto, that front office, as it was constructed on that very last night of that construction of the front office, they don't go by next available or the draft board or whatever. So they take their time to scout these players and they know exactly what they're going to bring to the table or what the potential to bring to the table is. And I think the combination of having someone like Darko who is going to really just like speak and encourage these people and these players to be try and show off who they are is a good position for someone like Murray-Boyles or someone like any kind of lottery player to be in. So yeah, I do think he kind of cracks that rotation. I do think they kind of experiment with him, but I do think he is again like interchangeable with some of these guys that I would say like are on the fringe of the rotation.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, certainly the guy who he has like the most sort of crossover with is Jonathan Mogbo, who we'll talk about in a little bit. Just like, toolsy long wing can probably fit into what they're trying to do defensively as a, agent of disruption and all of that stuff. It feels as though Murray-Boyles has already leapfrogged Mogbo in the hierarchy. Just, you use ninth pick on somebody that's going to immediately kind of put you higher up in the plans in the sort of hierarchy. But yeah, I think certainly outside of Dick and maybe Agbaji, I don't think anyone's guaranteed to just like be a through line. You're in the rotation all season long. And they talked about this on media day, right? Like, competition's good. There are going to be ups and downs. There are guys who are going to have moments where they're in the good graces and moments when they're not. And the nice thing is that there's a cycle of this where, hey, one guy doesn't quite work. There's another guy who's totally worthy of minutes, who's been fighting and knocking on the door, who can get those minutes, instead of recent years where it's been, oh, we don't have someone, so Orlando Robinson played 24 minutes, right? Like, it's a bit of a different situation depth-wise than they've had in recent years. That said, Murray-Boyles, I think, is going to stick around just because the defense is going to play, and what he does is very much in line with what the Raptors are trying to accomplish, just specifically on that end of the floor. And again, turning that into offense out of it, right? Like, he's going to be someone who I think can grab and go. They're going to embolden him to do that as someone with a handle. He's a good rebounder. And I think, whether it's playing with traditional bigs like Jakob Poeltl, playing in smaller configurations next to Mamu, playing with Scotty Barnes as a 4-5 with shooting around those two dudes, and they're just going to find a lot of different ways to play around with this shiny new defensive toy that Darko Rajaković has to play with. I have a nickname pitch for you, Chelsea.
Okay.
Mr. Chloe Kitts is a good one.
Okay.
I'm thinking just like trying to evoke his physical build in the nickname here, using his name any way we can. The Boiler. What do you think about the Boiler? You go down to the basement of your school and there's this big, thick boiler down there. You can't move it. It's just like there heating the school's water, I think is what that is. Or I don't know how I'm not anything remotely close to a technician of boilers, but the Boiler. What do you think?
I mean, I immediately think of like boils as a sense of like those things that are on like skin.
Well, thanks for ruining the mystique of my name immediately. Great.
It's October. We're talking about spooky things.
It's true. Yeah. Boils and ghouls.
Him and Gradey.
Yeah. There's something there. Anyway, we're working on nicknames that are not CMB.
We'll
we can do better as a society than CMB.
If you're at a Raptors game and you see Sean and I up on like 116, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. So we have Mr. Chloe Kitts and the Boiler as our two leaders in the clubhouse. Let us know in the comments which one's the better nickname. We'll come back at their side here at Chelsea and get into the dudes drafted last season who are all seemingly going to be fighting for jobs. Jamal Shead, Ja'Kobe Walter, Jamison Battle, Jonathan Mogbo. We'll talk about them to close out the show in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, cross-training, or with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. I am someone, when I exercise, I only can do it if it's gamified. I either got to be playing pickup basketball and trying to like get buckets, or I got to be like racing against myself on my bike or whatever it might be. There's got to be some sort of game to it. Otherwise, I just get bored. And Peloton, while I don't own one myself, is something I've always been fascinated by because it's the gamification of exercise, baby. You should go check it out. See all the wonderful features. They got the swivel screen. Game changer. You can go from running to the Tread Plus to strength training without missing a beat. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level each week. Let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. Back out here talking bench dudes with Chelsea Leite from Raptors HQ. And we get into the guys who played a whole lot of minutes for this team last year, Chelsea. 25% of the minutes to be exact, give or take a fraction or a decimal point or two. But Jamal Shead, Ja'Kobe Walter, Jamison Battle, Jonathan Mogbo. To me, two of those guys probably sneak into this theoretical 10 or 11-man rotation. One of them if it's a 10-man rotation. And then everyone else is kind of fighting for the scraps and waiting for opportunity. And I think there's a compelling case to be made for at least three of these guys that they should be that 10th guy. I am curious what you think here, Chelsea. First of all, the order I've put them in: Shead, Walter, Battle, Mogbo. Is that the order you'd put in terms of likelihood that they will play regular minutes for the team? I think Walter and Shead, you can maybe flip-flop there, but I think just the positional overlap with all the shooting guards they have might leave
Yeah.
Walter fighting for minutes. Again, it's a good problem to have. Oh, these guys who we think should get minutes are going to have to, compete for them and earn them. Great. That's awesome in terms of just like the overall health of a functioning basketball team. But it's not going to be easy for these guys to get heavy run in these games. How would you order those four? And who do you think has the best inside track on regular minutes to start?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with your order. I do think, like, again, if we're talking positional likelihood, I think that Shed gets a little bit more run just based on where he is, like, as a positional player. He kind of comes behind quickly as kind of that traditional point guard, but as we know, like, Scotty can run offense, Ingram can run offense. There's guys who have good handles on this team that you don't necessarily need to have that like backup point guard player to come in. But yeah, I agree with Jacoby and Jamal just kind of being there at the top of that like fringe. Like I was, I've been calling them the fringe all day. Like those players that are likely just on the outside of or just in the rotation if there are injuries. I mean, knock on wood, because that was the whole thing last year, but will be able to come in and you know, do like take over if needed. And I think the benefit, and this was again a big thing on at media day on Monday, where everybody was talking about the competition in practice and how practice has kind of been operating as of late, and they're all very connected, and this kind of bench versus starters rivalry, if you want to call it that, they're going to be so competitive in practice, and these guys are going to get like, I feel like people forget that, like, even though so and so guy might not be playing in these games, like when you have a team like the Raptors where they're so developmentally focused, these guys are getting like good practice time. They're, scrimmaging a lot. They're getting a lot of one-on-one time with the assistant coaches. They're in these smaller kind of shooting groups where they're mixing up the starters with the lower rotation guys and just giving everybody a lot of run. And there's a lot of good chemistry on this team. And so I do think that what these bench guys, if they aren't getting minutes, I think their intention on the team is going to be to challenge these starters in practice to really be prepared for these game situations. And I think they take that role very seriously based on the few things we've heard from training camp and media day and such like that. And it's funny because you kind of saw that back in like the 2018, 2019 era when you had the quote unquote like bench mob, those like, Fred VanVleet, OG, that, kind of era of guys where they took that role of challenging the starters quite seriously. And then in turn developed them into this really great kind of second string who could come in and make a difference in little ways. And so I think that's like such an exciting aspect of this team. And I think as someone who, has the privilege of being able to see these practices and see kind of a little bit how the team operates on, non-game days, I'm excited to see how that dynamic in practice kind of affects what we see on the court.
Totally. It's another one of those things we've missed the last couple of years when they've just not been a normal basketball team, where the intent has not been to win and compete and all that stuff. Like this is what normal basketball teams have. This is what competitive basketball teams have, which is like healthy internal competition with a lot of guys vying for spots, and not everyone is going to get them. The Oklahoma City Thunder last year, like 12 dudes who were like, I should be playing. And eventually, you figure out your guys by the end of the season. But to get through 82, like, you're going to need them all. One guy I think who I think stands a chance of kind of playing spoiler for one of Shed or Walter is Jamison Battle. I think we got to talk about him a little bit, just because his shooting is just so additive when he's on the floor. He doesn't do a ton else, though. He doesn't really take a lot off the table. He's not a bad defensive player. He's such a good shooter, and he's such a willing shooter and such a quick release. And I wonder if he's someone who, for certain lineup combinations, he's just going to be an easier guy to throw in there than Shead or Walter, who, you know, I believe in Walter's 3-point shot. Shead, we'll see. I think he showed some signs last year before really tailing off near the back part of the season. Is that rookie fatigue? He played a lot of minutes last season. Very possible that that's the case. Maybe he gets back to that sort of mid-30s he was kind of chugging along at during the peak of the season. But if he can't, and Walter is, you know, just kind of blocked out by other guys at that position, is Battle someone who is just like a very easy 10th or 11th guy for Darko to call on when maybe they're getting zoned up and they need someone to hit some threes. Maybe they just don't have the proper space on the floor to run the half-court offense the way they run it. Like, I think there's a chance he's going to be the sort of fifth guy in a lot of different mishmash lineups the team throws out there, and that could come at the expense of Shead or Battle's minutes. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, it makes me like, obviously an NBA rotation is bigger than a WNBA rotation, given that most of these teams play with 11 players, but total, not just rotation, but total.
Sure, yeah.
And so I think about a lot of these kind of like utility players that you see in women's basketball who kind of have that like niche, and they come in and, you know, will do that one thing really well. Whether that's like defense or shooting or whatever. And I think that when you have a bigger roster, you can kind of like deploy those little utility players a lot more. And I mean, we all talk about a 10-11 rotation night in and night out, but like you still have all those guys on your bench that you can call on at any moment. And I do think like Darko's the kind of guy, I don't think he's afraid to, if we're in a game situation and the offense is struggling and you just need to throw something else out there that is going to change, or have someone who brings some energy, someone who brings some offense. I think Jamison Battle's that guy who you just call on and he is going to be ready at a moment's notice. He's going to go out there, shoot a couple of shots, turn the game around, bring you some energy, and then he just kind of, you know, and that's his role.
Yeah.
And so I don't think Darko's the kind of guy who's going to be like afraid to deploy that when he needs to. And so, yeah, I agree that Battle could definitely, you know, shake it up and come in every once in a while.
There are a lot of these dudes around the league who just like are clear. All you do is shoot threes and make them go in. And that's kind of their gig, right? You got Isaiah Joe, for example, with the Thunder. You've got your Sam Merrills and stuff like that with the Cavaliers. Like, you know, the sort of dead eye 3-point shooter who don't do much else. It's not like a player archetype that's necessarily taking you deep in the playoffs, because you got to do more than that with the ball in your hands. But the regular season is a different story. And like the shooting is just going to get Battle on the floor. And then the supplementary stuff, you know, taking a step in, hitting the mid-range when he gets run off the line, making the next pass in the sequence, defending, like that stuff is all in work in progress and needs refinement, but the shooting gets him on the floor. And I think that's going to be the case for him quite a bit this year. Poor Jonathan Mogbo. Seems like my guy.
Bestie, he's chilling.
Yeah, he's hanging out. And look, if there's injuries at all, or they just want to get super weird, like at some point we're going to see a Scotty Murray-Boyles Mogbo front court, and it's going to be insane, and it's going to be just long and nasty, and they will score 4 points in 8 minutes, but it's going to be super fun, and they might give up 2
sitting
points
there at Scotiabank Arena eating some like not very good chicken tenders, vibing along with it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, Mogbo to me is the very clear bottom of that tier of dudes who's going to be in the mix, but you know, no shame in being the 12th man on a roster where they say there's 12 or 13 guys who are going to get runs. So we're going to leave it there. Chelsea, thanks so much for hanging out. It's always a pleasure to chat. Anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
Yeah, I mean, Raptors HQ, as you said, is rolling as always. We got some great stuff coming up. And if you're interested in the WNBA, like check out my stuff, because it be wild out here.
Yeah, it do be wild out here, and it's going to get more wild in May when the Tempo are here. I've got my season tickets, Chelsea. I'm thrilled. I can't wait. Let's go. Hopefully there's not a lockout. Either way, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. And Chelsea, we have you back on in we'll talk Raptors during the season, but we'll also talk about labor strife if need be regarding the WNBA. If you're bored and they're not playing games or something like that down the line, fingers crossed that's not the case, and we can just have you on to talk about the Tempo and all of the cool free agents they're going to sign, because everyone's a free agent this summer. Let's go. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Summer, winter. I always get so male sports coded of me to say this summer. Anyway, I'm a fool. We will leave it there. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you on Thursday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Bye-bye.
Ah, dang it.